Thanks for coming along to the presentation today. My name's Charlotte Thompson. I'm a psychological wellbeing practitioner at North Tyneside Talking Therapies.
And my name's Roisin Clough, and I'm also a psychological wellbeing practitioner at North Tyneside Talking Therapies.
And today we're here presenting the Understanding and Managing Your Mental Health presentation. So anxiety is something that we all experience from time to time. So for example, when you go to a job interview, you may experience anxiety, or when you go to a hospital appointment or have an operation, it's really normal to feel anxious about that. So sometimes anxiety can be difficult to recognise or describe. Some people may describe anxiety as feeling stressed out or feeling tense and nervous. You may feel sort of unable to relax or feel on edge or even perhaps a bit irritable. And often people describe it as feeling sort of up a height with heightened emotions. So as I mentioned, anxiety is natural, and at times it's a really useful emotion and experience. We all need a level of anxiety to keep ourselves safe and well. And when we feel anxious, something that we can do is worry. So worry and anxiety are two different things. Anxiety is sort of the emotion that you'll feel. Behaviour is something that you sort of do. So worry is that sort of behaviour. And when people worry sort of excessively about daily life events and activities, this is when it can become unhelpful. So unhelpful worry is when worry is very frequent, so happening quite a lot, when it's difficult to control the worry or dismiss it. And we can often start to worry about how much we're worrying, which can create a really difficult cycle to get out of, worrying about worry. So this slide explains what anxiety looks like in a more physical sense. So you may have heard of the term fight or flight before. The fight or flight response is your body's natural way of sort of keeping you safe. So if you think back to caveman times, if there was a big dinosaur coming, you would sort of have this fight and flight response kick off to keep you safe. So it's your body doing all of these brilliant adaptations to either fight the danger or to run away from it, flight. So as you can see on this body diagram, your body does all of these different things when it's feeling anxious. So if you start at the very top, your thoughts might start racing, you might get changes to vision, sort of called tunnel vision sometimes, or be very aware of your surroundings. Your heart can start racing, your breathing can increase. So breathing increases because we're trying to get all that oxygen around your body, trying to fuel your muscles to run away, and your heart needs to race to get that oxygen pumping around your body. You may notice changes in temperature. Sometimes people feel hot and cold at the same time. So hot because they're getting ready to run away, but cold in potentially like your hands and feet because all your body's diverting the energy to muscle groups instead. So all of these things are really normal when you're feeling anxious, and it's your body's way of trying to keep you safe when you're feeling anxious. But in the modern day, there aren't many dinosaurs roaming around, so we don't need this as much. It's still helpful if you were to wander into traffic, for example. This is a good response to get you quickly back out of it. But it can feel very uncomfortable going through these symptoms. So, having your heart racing, your breathing changes, hot and cold, and snakes in your tummy, it's really uncomfortable to experience anxiety sometimes. So if we try and think about sort of anxiety and how it presents in different ways, we've talked a bit earlier about the emotions you might be feeling, frightened, nervous, up a height. You may get this sort of sense of dread, like something bad's going to happen. You may be feeling quite helpless or hopeless, especially if you've had anxiety for quite a long time. You may feel out of control, or again that irritability, anger, that's sort of the fight side of anxiety over the flight of it. In terms of your thoughts, so you might have worry thoughts, so things like what if this happens, what if that happens, or rumination, which is when you go over the past and replay events, trying to sort of think about what you could have done or should have done. You may have that feeling that something bad's going to happen and try and sort of predict the future. If I go into this situation, I'll say this, and then if they say that, I'll say that. So really trying to future plan. You may think I can't cope, I can't manage. You may have that sense of sort of confusion or indecisiveness, feeling unable to make up your mind about things in your body. So all of the symptoms that we've discussed with the fight and flight response there, but also potentially feeling quite exhausted or fatigued. It's an exhausting thing having anxiety happen all the time. It takes up a lot of energy in your body. So you may feel a lack of energy. You may have difficulties sleeping, which also sort of contributes to that lack of energy. So even though you're using up a lot of energy, feeling anxious, that worry can prevent you getting to sleep. Your body's on edge, ready to run away from something. And as we mentioned in the fight and flight diagram there, so heart racing, butterflies in your tummy, feeling sweaty, breathless. And then in terms of behaviour, so what you do when you're anxious, you may withdraw from things, so avoid going to certain things because you're feeling anxious. You may sort of neglect different responsibilities, so I know that when I'm feeling anxious, the housework might mount up a little bit, or I might procrastinate doing certain things. You may be a bit more snappy with people. You may be a bit fidgety and restless, so always sort of moving around or sort of doing something with your hands. May avoid doing things entirely or seeking reassurance or asking other people for answers, for their opinion. That ties in with that indecisiveness we spoke about. Or you may find yourself over-planning, over-preparing, trying to think about every eventuality, what you will do if that happens, what if this happens. And something that we can do with this sort of model is put it into what we call a bit of a formulation. So those areas that we've just spoke about can link together. So if we take the situation of going to a hospital appointment, for example, the thoughts that you might have in that situation are, what if my sister doesn't come and pick me up on time? What if we can't get parked? What if I'm late for the appointment? What if I can't be seen because I'm late? What if I've gotten worse? So a lot of sort of worries going around in your head. So that's going to lead to you feeling worried and anxious. You may get a little bit irritable with someone. So behaviours, you may be texting your sister multiple times, making sure she's going to pick you up on time. It's that little bit of reassurance seeking that we spoke about. You may arrive very, very early to your appointment, try and overplan everything, and you may find yourself worrying. So worrying is a behaviour because it occupies your time. It's something that you will sit and do. And then physically, you may find your breathing faster. You may find your heart pounding, you may go sweaty and dizzy. And if you're going through all of those physical symptoms, those are very unpleasant. They lead to me feeling quite anxious and worried if my body was doing all of those things. They might reinforce that thought, what if I've gotten worse if all of these things were happening in my body? And then I'm going to try and arrive even earlier. I'm going to worry more. I'm going to be texting my sister even more to try and make sure I'm planning. So you can start to see how those areas can link together and feed each other and create a little bit of a vicious cycle with anxiety at times. Anxiety presents in cancer, so the reason that we're sort of doing the presentation today and thinking about how those things can interact with one another. So on your sort of cancer journey, there will be points where it's very, very normal to feel anxious. As we said earlier, going for operations, doctor's appointments, waiting to hear if things are getting better or worse. That's a really normal thing to feel anxious about. And in terms of sort of anxiety specific to cancer, fear of treatment related side effects. So a lot of people, it may not be the cancer itself, it may be things related to the cancer, financial issues, hair loss, impact on relationships. Might be fear of the cancer returning or spreading after treatment, so thinking about into the future, what's going to happen. There's quite a high level of uncertainty about it. So uncertainty about the future. What will happen with my health, or what will happen with my family, the finances. You may worry about losing your independence, especially if you've been quite an independent person before. So it can be quite a role transition, having to be cared for if you've always been that caring person looking after the family. You may have concerns about sort of having those relationships change. So it might be relationships in a romantic sense with your partner, could also be family relationships, relationships with friends or at work. There may be that fear of death, which is a normal sort of thing to experience, a fear of death, but that may come to the forefront if you're experiencing cancer or a friend or relative is. So what we want to do is just try and increase your awareness of worrying as the first point of managing it. We can't start to manage worries if we don't know what it is we're worrying about. So what can be helpful in increasing your awareness of your worries is keeping what we call a worry diary. So this diary can help you identify if there's any themes to your worrying, any days or times where you may be worrying particularly more, any events that come up that cause you to worry sort of more. It can help you to understand triggers for the worry, when it may be coming up, and also help you to deal with the worry when you are noticing it. So if you notice there's a specific theme to your worrying, so for example, whenever I go to the hospital I worry more, you can put some things into practice before you go into the hospital, knowing that that's one of the triggers for the worry and anxiety you feel. So what we've got here is a worry diary. If I talk you through it, the first column is situation, so just identifying the situation it is that you're in when you find the worrying starts. If we take that hospital appointment example, often people may worry in the hospital appointment or in the waiting room, but also you may find you worrying at home before the appointment. It could be days before, when the letter comes through the door, for example, you may start to worry. In the worry column, try and capture exactly what it is you're worrying about. Be really specific. The more specific you are, the better you can manage these worries. So instead of just writing upcoming appointment in worry, it might be going, what if the cancer spread? What if it's gotten worse? What if I don't make the appointment on time? What if the appointment's cancelled because of COVID? What if I have to wear a mask and I don't like wearing a mask? It makes me feel uncomfortable. So there are a lot of different worries that may come with one situation. Try and identify exactly what it is that you're worrying about. The next column is the intensity of the anxiety from 0 to 100. So a 0% worry would be very, very low on the anxiety scale, whereas 100 would be very, very intense. So for example, if I was worrying about what I was going to have for lunch today, that might just be 5%. There's something in my house that I'm sure I'll be able to find. If I was worrying about a family member having an operation, that would be a 100% worry for me. You know, that'd be quite an intense anxiety that I'd be experiencing. So try and scale the level of anxiety that you're experiencing. And the last section here is about classifying your worry. So you can see they're labelled P and H. So this slide will explain what sort of those headings mean. So the H stands for hypothetical. This is a worry where you can't do anything about it, either because it hasn't happened or because it isn't in your control. So they tend to start with what if, these worries, and they're usually based in the future. So some topical examples at the moment are things like the COVID pandemic. What if I got COVID, or what if a family member got COVID? Things in the news like Brexit, for example, not knowing how that's going to turn out. But also it can be very personal things. What if the car breaks down? What if I get worse? What if I don't get this job? And we don't know those things. You may or may not. When I get in my car tonight, it may break down. I hope it doesn't, but it's something that I won't know until I get in it. So no matter what we do in terms of thinking about these things, it's not going to change the outcome. Whereas a practical worry is something that we have a level of control over. So these are thoughts about things that are upcoming, but that we can do something about. So for example, when I'm at work, if I'm worrying about when I'm going to do my notes and my admin, I can work a little bit later, I could work through lunch or wake up early. If it was a long-term problem, I could speak to my manager about that and see if there's any things that could be delegated to other people. The example is in here. I need to sort my debt out, so there's things that we can do to think about that, agencies you could contact, planning for events, things like birthday parties, bills, appointments. If you notice a practical problem such as a new symptom, that would be practical. So if you noticed a new symptom, you can call up your GP, contact a specialist, have a look on the NHS website and see what's normal, what's not normal. So it's helpful to think about the difference between what's a hypothetical worry and what's a practical worry. And in terms of worry management, if we can separate practical from hypothetical, we can then go on and do something about those worries. So the approach is based on the type of worries you have. Practical worries are best dealt with a problem-solving approach, which we'll come on to in just a minute. And hypothetical worries are best dealt with changing the focus of your attention, techniques such as mindfulness and letting go, which again we'll come on to later in the presentation. This is what we call the worry tree, or sometimes I call it the anxiety tree. And the very first step is, as we've said with that worry diary, notice what you're worrying about. What exactly is the thing that you're worrying about? And then there's some questions you can ask yourself. Is this worry about a current problem or a hypothetical situation? Essentially, can I do something about this? If the answer is no, I can't do anything about it, it's hypothetical, it's a what if. So, can't do anything to fix the problem, I should therefore learn to react differently. It's about letting go. If it's a practical, real problem, this is a current problem that I have influence over, I could potentially fix or at least begin to solve the problem. So if you're feeling anxious, that can often lead to you struggling to concentrate. You might not have as much energy as you did before, and it can become a bit more difficult to solve problems. So there's a really structured approach that we can use to help you solve those problems. Even if you have lots of different worries, this is a really helpful approach, and you can use it for each of those practical problems that you have. These are the 7 steps that we'll be talking through in the problem-solving approach. So if we think about the first one, identifying the problem. So we'll take the example of a missed appointment. So the problem identified is I've missed my 6-month checkup appointment with the nurse. So step 2 is to think about some possible solutions to that. You could contact the hospital and rearrange. You could wait another 6 months for the next appointment to come up. You could show up at the hospital, try to get seen there and then. You could contact the GP. And there may be a list of other solutions. You might go down and think of 50 different things you could do. Don't limit yourself here. Try and list as many different solutions as you can think of. Once you've got that list, then put them into this little table. So list all of the solutions and then think about the strengths and weaknesses of each of those. There'll be positives of different strategies, there'll be different negatives of different strategies, and just weigh up, right, this one has the most positives, this one has the least negatives, this one seems more sensible or least sensible, now that I've mapped them out. Step 4 is, once you've analysed those, pick the solution. So in this case we've gone for contact the hospital to rearrange the appointment. In terms of implementing that plan, find the appointment letter. So think about what you need to do. Find the appointment letter to get the correct number for the hospital, get my diary ready so that I know when I can rearrange to, contact via telephone, request to speak to the nurse. So make a really detailed plan of what you're going to do to action that solution. Step 6 is action it. Go out and do it. Give it a try. And then the final step, step 7, is reviewing that plan. So once I've completed it, did it work? Did it not work? If it didn't work, let's go back to step 3 and look at different solutions. If it did work, then brilliant, problem solved, and then that's a worry that you're not having anymore.
So yeah, obviously Charlotte's gone through there how to manage kind of practical worries. So what we're going to look at now is how to manage some of the more hypothetical worries that you might be experiencing. So this technique is really designed for helping you to kind of manage the worries that you're experiencing. We're not necessarily going to be able to stop them altogether because, like Charlotte said, worry is really normal and sometimes it's really helpful as well, so we don't want to get rid of it, but we certainly want it to be something that feels more manageable for you. So these techniques will take some practice and some patience. They're not something that's going to work kind of overnight, but they're definitely worth sticking with. And what they'll do is they'll give you the opportunity to kind of address your worries as they come up throughout the day, but without having to spend too much time and attention on them. So hopefully the payoff is that you'll be able to let your worries go and then concentrate your time and attention on other things that are more helpful and more important to you. So, you know, hopefully you might see that if you practice these techniques regularly, you'll be able to kind of concentrate and focus better, and things like your sleep will improve. So the first technique is called the 2-minute rule. So the way that this works is that if you notice yourself worrying or ruminating over something, so feeling like it's kind of really churning through your mind, what you would do is not try and stop yourself, but give yourself 2 minutes to think about that worry. So time yourself, you know, use your watch, use a phone or a clock, and just say, right, I'm going to think about this for 2 minutes. At the end of that 2 minutes, you would then ask yourself the 3 questions that are on the slide. So the first one is, have I made any progress towards solving a problem? Do I understand something about the problem or my feelings about it that I didn't understand before? And do I feel any better than before I started feeling like this? So if you were feeling quite anxious beforehand, do you feel any less anxious now? What this will be really helpful for is to recognise, is this a worry that's worth me thinking about now? So some worries that you'll have will be hypothetical, but also realistic and fair worries to be having. So, you know, worrying about a future hospital appointment is a good example of that. It's a fair worry to have, but if it's in 6 months' time, is it very helpful to be spending a lot of time thinking about it now? So that's what this technique is really useful for, just to help you to see, is this a helpful worry? Can I do anything about it? Or actually, do I need to look at a way of kind of letting it go? So once you've done the 2-minute rule, you will then need to look at how to kind of refocus your attention away from those worries. So as that 2-minute rule has shown, a lot of the worries we have are very future based, and there's nothing we can do about it in the here and now that's going to change that. So we want to let go of those worries and focus on what's happening in front of us. So there's a couple of different ways that we can do that. To start with, you can think about kind of the idea of sort of letting your worries pass by you. So thinking about it in terms of perhaps leaves on a stream. So imagining sort of leaves on a stream passing by, or sometimes people talk about the idea of letting go of a balloon. So kind of holding a balloon and letting it go and watching it sort of disappear, or cars passing. And then if you click on this link here, that'll take you to a video that talks about letting go of your worries in terms of kind of a sushi train. So that's quite a good metaphor for it as well. And then another technique that can be really useful is something that we call attention training. So this is about focusing on the things that are happening sort of in front of you, so in the present moment. Because generally when we're worrying about things, our mind has gone kind of either quite far into the future or perhaps kind of taken us into the past to think about things that have already happened. So attention training is just bringing your focus back into the future. Into the present, and what's happening in front of you. So we sometimes call these grounding techniques, so just about grounding yourself in the moment. So usually these involve using your 5 senses just thinking about what can you hear, so perhaps noticing the sounds around you. So that might be something that's internal, like your own breathing, or it might be something that's external, like the sound of traffic outside, if you can hear children playing outside, if there's anything happening around you, if anyone's watching the TV, if the radio's on, if there's any music. If you've got out for a walk, it might be thinking about, can I hear any, birds, any animals, anything like that. And then thinking about, is there anything that you can smell? So again, that might be quite a good one if you're outside, or have you made any food recently? Is anybody eating or drinking anything? Also thinking about what you can see, so observing your surroundings and maybe trying to notice things that you might not have noticed before, so the different colours, textures, patterns and things. And then you can also use your taste. So this might be the one that's probably perhaps the hardest to use, because it'll depend whether you've kind of eaten or drunk anything recently, but you can think about kind of how your mouth feels. Is there anything you can taste, anything you can smell? And then thinking about touch as well. So, are you, if you sat on a chair, thinking about what does the chair feel like? What do your clothes feel like? Sometimes it's helpful to kind of put your feet on the floor and perhaps press into the floor and kind of get that sensation of grounding yourself. Thinking about the temperature as well. So, do your hands feel cold compared to the rest of you? And just think about really focusing your attention on all of the different senses and what's happening around you. And hopefully what you'll find is that it's very difficult to be caught up in your worries and your thoughts if you're quite focused in on what's happening around you. And then along with kind of attention training, other techniques that can be really useful for kind of managing those worries is relaxation. So this is particularly useful if you're struggling with the physical symptoms of worry, so like what Charlotte was mentioning around your heart beating faster or difficulty breathing or muscle tension. So this is something that you can do, on the way to something that's making you feel anxious. So if you were going to a hospital or a doctor's appointment, if you felt anxious beforehand, you could try some relaxation. Whilst you're in the waiting room, you could do it as well. If you're struggling with sleep, relaxation is really useful then. I think something we'll find often is if we're worried about things, they'll come into our mind when we try to sleep, because that's the kind of quiet time of the day. So relaxation can be really useful then. Okay. So one of the easiest ways to do relaxation is with breathing exercises. So when we're in that kind of fight or flight response, our breathing rate and pattern tends to change and get quite fast. So you can do this using a technique called sort of controlled or calm breathing, we call it sometimes as well. So this is just about shifting your breathing rate. So the best way to do this, to start with, to practice it, is do it sort of sat down or either sort of laying on a bed. And take a big deep breath in through your nose. Put your hand on your stomach at the same time so you can feel your stomach push out when you breathe, and count up to a count of 4. Hold that for a count of 1 or 2, and then breathe out through your mouth for a count of 6. You can also use the visual that we've got on the slide there, that idea of sort of inhaling when the circle expands and exhaling when it contracts, if that's easier than counting. And hopefully what you'll find is that this will start to just slow your breathing down. It'll feel deeper, it'll feel very calming. And also the act of counting sometimes can again just help take your mind off the worries that you're having. What I would say with this as well, if for any reason it feels uncomfortable breathing in through your nose, it's fine to just breathe in through your mouth as well. Another relaxation technique that can be really useful is something called progressive muscle relaxation. So this is useful if you struggle with a lot of muscle tension. I think we can often carry quite a lot of tension in our shoulders. You might notice you get headaches, things like that. So that's what PMR is really useful for. So it's just about kind of deliberately tensing and relaxing each of the muscles in your body. So you might want to start, with your hands perhaps, kind of clenching your fists, feeling them tense, and then relax them, and then kind of move through each of your muscles. So there's a link here on the slide that will take you to a guided progressive muscle relaxation video, so where someone will kind of talk you through tensing and relaxing each of the muscles. So there's a couple of mindfulness exercises on there that you can try at home as well, and the Wellbeing Glasgow audio resources that has some breathing exercises and some progressive muscle relaxation on there. So just to sort of summarise what we've gone through today then, so although anxiety is a very normal and sometimes helpful emotion, it can become unmanageable. So there are many different kind of physical symptoms that we might experience alongside that, and although they can feel very uncomfortable, none of those are dangerous. Recording your worries can help you to start to identify those, and then once you've identified them, you can then look at kind of managing and reducing them. And that can be done with these two different types of techniques that we've gone through there. So if it's practical worries, it's looking at problem solving. If it's hypothetical, it's looking at letting go of worries, attention training, mindfulness and relaxation. Other resources that are available, so Live Well with Cancer charity are doing mindfulness Zoom workshops, so that's the first Monday of every month from 7 till 8, and also in their shop they have mindfulness calendars and colouring books, so a few resources for you there as well. And then if for any reason you are feeling that you're perhaps really struggling with anxiety and would like a little bit of extra support with it, you're more than welcome to come and access some support from our service. So we're from North Tyneside Talking Therapies, and there's a couple of ways that you can get in touch with us. So you can just do an online self-referral, which is really easy and straightforward and quite quick. Or if you feel more comfortable, you can contact us by telephone. So our details are all on the slide there. You don't have to speak to your GP first, so you can just come sort of directly to us.